Okay, so this is the university tuition calculator again, but this is a more complicated version because I've changed the business rules to something a little more realistic. So those business rules that we talked about in the last video, 111 for undergrads, 222 for grads, and so on, those are for in-state residents. Okay, as you know, with colleges, when you go out of state, you have to pay possibly double or more than double the tuition. So we have the undergrads, out-of-state undergrads in this scenario, paying $250 a credit hour. That's more than double what the in-state grads, undergrads pay. The grad students are paying $500 a credit hour, and then the doctoral candidates are up to $750 a credit hour. This is all still cheap, by the way. But anyway, so let's go to the code here. So what I've added is this res status variable, and I'm getting the residential status from the user. So I'm asking them to enter I for in-state and O for out-of-state. I'll run this just to demo it, but you pretty much know what's going to happen. Maybe I'll do an out-of-state resident this time. So undergrad will say out-of-state, and 10 credit hours, so that should be up to what, $2,500 for the tuition for the semester. Okay, so let's look at the decision structure here. Now this is a nested decision. Look at that. Okay, so we have like kind of the outer if else, which deals with the residential status. So if it's an in-state resident, if the res status is I, little I, you know, look, I'm using that lower method, that string method, lower. So if they have the caps lock key on and they enter a capital I, not a problem, it'll work because that's converted to lower for the sake of this comparison. So it's little I that we'll compare to. So if they are in state, then these are really just the business rules that I had before, copied and pasted. You know, and when you're nesting if statements like this, you know, and I keep mentioning this, but the indentation is very important. It's always important, but especially now that we're nesting, you really have to keep an eye on your indentation. 4 spaces. Look, this is the block for that master if clause. Okay, same thing here. This is the block for the else clause, right? So 4 spaces, very consistent, straight up and down, not doing a staggered staircase thing. But then within each if statement, within the inner if statements, then the indentation needs to be consistent within there. 4 spaces, 4 spaces. 4 spaces. Okay, consistency is everything. One thing I'll mention, if you wanted to play around with like tabbing blocks of code, like moving blocks of code horizontally, you can just drag through, select that block of code, and then do tab, 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 shift tab should get it back to where it was. Okay, so you have that at your disposal as well. So yeah, so if the res status is in state, these are the rules, or else they're out of state. Now, could I do like elif, res status, lower, yeah, I can do this, equals, what is that, O for out of state? Sure, that'll work too, but you know, that's kind of redundant. Just an else would be fine because look, either it's in state or out of state. Okay, I don't really have to, if I've made it this far, it's an out-of-state resident. All I care about is that it wasn't it wasn't in state. So at this point, I don't really need to, like, you know, type it all out. It's just else. They're out of state. They have to pay these prices. Okay, so there you have it. So, you know, I changed the tuition prices. I was careful to do that too. And then it'll all fall into place when you run it. But yeah, so that is a nested if statement. So you have the if inside of the if.